Eliza had always loved London. Since she was little, she dreamed of returning to the city that fascinated her so much. Now, at 17, she was finally returning to finish high school and reunite with her boyfriend, Lucas, a caring and attentive young man who had always been by her side. The city, with its cobblestone streets and old buildings, was the perfect backdrop for Eliza's dreams. However, there was something that always bothered her: a house on the back street where she lived. The house was dark and scary, and the resident, Pablo, was a mystery that Eliza could not unravel. Upon returning to London, Eliza was greeted with warm hugs from her family and Lucas. They strolled through the bustling streets, visited the tourist spots Eliza loved so much, and she began to feel at home again. However, the presence of the dark house on the back street never left her mind. One night, while walking with Lucas, Eliza decided to tell him about her feelings regarding that house. "Lucas, that house on the back street gives me the creeps. I've always been afraid of it and the man who lives there," Eliza confessed, holding Lucas's hand tightly. "Don't worry, Eliza. It's just an old house. Pablo is just a reserved man. There's nothing to worry about," Lucas replied, trying to reassure her. But Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She began investigating the house and Pablo, discovering that he was rarely seen outside and that few people in the neighborhood knew anything about him. The more she researched, the more intrigued she became. One night, Eliza decided she needed to know more. With a mix of courage and curiosity, she approached the dark house. As she got closer, she felt a chill down her spine but continued. She knocked on the door, and after a few seconds, the door was opened by Pablo. He was a tall man with a severe expression, but his eyes showed deep sadness. "Can I help you?" Pablo asked in a grave voice. "Sorry to bother you. I'm Eliza. I live nearby, and I've always been curious about this house and about you," said Eliza, trying to sound confident. Pablo observed her for a moment before opening the door wider and inviting her in. The house was dark and filled with old objects. As they walked through the living room, Pablo began to tell his story. He had lost his family in a tragic accident and had since lived in isolation, trapped in his own grief. "I don't like going out. This house is all that remains of my memories," Pablo explained, sadness in his voice. Eliza felt a wave of compassion for him. She decided she wanted to help him out of that darkness. In the following days, she began visiting him regularly, bringing a little light and joy into his life. Gradually, Pablo began to open up more, sharing stories about his family and the happy times he had before the tragedy. However, as Eliza helped Pablo heal his emotional wounds, she began to notice something strange happening. Objects mysteriously disappeared from her house, and she felt like she was being watched. One night, when she returned home, she found an anonymous note in her room. "Stop investigating. You don't know what you're doing." Eliza showed the note to Lucas, who was concerned. "Eliza, I think you should stop visiting Pablo. This is getting dangerous," he said seriously. But Eliza was determined to find out the truth. She continued her visits to Pablo and began asking more direct questions about his past. On one of these visits, she found an old photo of a woman who looked very much like her. "Who is this woman, Pablo?" she asked, showing the photo. Pablo turned pale and tried to take the photo from her hands. "She was my wife. You look very similar," he said, his voice trembling. Eliza felt a chill down her spine. She decided she needed to investigate more about Pablo's wife. She discovered that she had mysteriously disappeared many years ago and that Pablo was the main suspect, but nothing had ever been proven against him. With this new information, Eliza began to feel unsafe around Pablo. She decided to confront him. "Pablo, what really happened to your wife?" she asked firmly. Pablo was silent for a long time before answering. "I don't know. She just disappeared. I never knew what happened to her," he said, pain in his eyes. Eliza didn't know whether to believe him, but she decided to continue helping him. However, the anonymous threats continued, and she began to feel that she was in danger. One night, while returning home, she was approached by a strange man who warned her to stop investigating Pablo. "You're getting involved in something dangerous, girl. Stop now, or you'll regret it," the man said before disappearing into the darkness. Eliza was scared but didn't give up. She decided to seek help from a private detective to investigate Pablo's past and find out the truth about his wife's disappearance. The detective, an experienced man named Thomas, accepted the case and began investigating. Meanwhile, Eliza continued her visits to Pablo, but now she was more cautious. She felt she was getting close to discovering something important. On one of these visits, Pablo surprised her with a shocking revelation. "I'm not who you think I am, Eliza. I have a secret that needs to be revealed," he said, with a mysterious look. Eliza remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "My wife didn't disappear. She was murdered, and I was wrongly accused. Since then, I've been living in hiding, trying to prove my innocence," Pablo confessed, tears in his eyes. Eliza was shocked. "But why didn't you say that before? Who killed her?" she asked urgently. "I don't know, but I've always suspected an old rival, someone who was obsessed with her," Pablo replied bitterly. Eliza decided she needed to help Pablo prove his innocence. With Detective Thomas's help, they began investigating Pablo's old rival, a man named Victor. They discovered that Victor had moved to another city shortly after Pablo's wife's disappearance, and that he had a history of obsessive behavior. As they continued to investigate, Eliza began receiving threatening messages from Victor. "You're getting involved where you shouldn't, girl. Stop now, or you'll face the consequences," one of the messages read. Eliza was determined to continue. She felt she was close to uncovering the truth. One night, while at home, she heard a strange noise coming from outside. She went to check and found Victor trying to break in. "What are you doing here?" she shouted, scared. Victor looked at her with disdain. "You shouldn't have gotten involved in this, Eliza. Now you'll pay the price," he said, advancing toward her. Eliza managed to escape and ran to Pablo's house. "Victor is trying to kill me. He must be the murderer of your wife," she said, breathless. Pablo was furious. "We need to call the police and put an end to this once and for all," he said, picking up the phone. The police arrived quickly and arrested Victor. During the interrogation, he confessed to the murder of Pablo's wife and admitted that he was obsessed with her. "I never thought the truth would come out after so many years," he said coldly. Pablo was finally exonerated and began rebuilding his life. Eliza felt immense relief for having helped solve the mystery. However, the experience left her marked. She learned that the truth can be painful, but that it is important to fight for justice. In the following months, Eliza continued her life in London, now without the constant fear of the dark house. She continued her studies, strengthened her relationship with Lucas, and kept in touch with Pablo, who became a dear friend. Eliza and Pablo's story spread throughout the neighborhood, and the dark house ceased to be a place of fear, becoming a symbol of resilience and courage. Eliza would never forget the journey she lived and the lessons she learned about the importance of truth and justice. And so, with the mystery solved and life returning to normal, Eliza could finally enjoy her beloved London, knowing that she had made a difference in someone's life and that the future was full of possibilities.